I'll have to take a look at that. All right, are we ready? All right.
Any calls on the Arts Council?
Yeah, I know. I know. There's a. All right, let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and members. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. The clerk will please call the roll.
Calling the roll, Mr. Greenspan.
Here.
Mr. Miller. Here. Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Hairston.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Strong.
Here.
Ms. Brown. Here. We have a quorum.
Okay, great. Before us are the minutes. Sorry, any public comment related to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
Before us are the minutes from the November 7, 2016 meeting. If there are any amendments, I'll entertain them. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion is made and second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Meeting minutes are approved. We have a few items referred to committee. What we're going to do here is hear item A by itself, and then we'll vote on items B, C, and D together since they're related. The clerk will please read the first item.
Resolution 2016-0226, authorizing establishment of an underwriter pool based on evaluation of responses to RFQ 36628, consisting of local financial institutions that the county may employ to assist in any public financing arrangements.
Okay, very good. And who's here to speak on this? Director Kennedy.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, good afternoon. I'll try and make this short and sweet. The county's former agreement with underwriting as part of an RFP that was put out several years ago expired at the end of 2015. I thought it would be important for us to put together a process to not only acquire the services of a new financial advisor, that contract also expired at the end of last year, but to also formalize the acquisition of underwriters that we use in any kind of financing deals that the county will move forward for the next year and a half or so. We established a committee that was made up of a member of the executive team, Chris Glassborn, who's since departed. Mr. McAleer and myself reviewed both all the financial advisory responses that we received, as well as the specific responses to underwriters. As a group, we collectively reviewed each proposal in a number of different discussions, kind of outlined the pros and the cons of each individual group that submitted a response to our RFQ. And at the end of the day, we were all comfortable with recommending the award to an underwriting pool to 3 banks in the Cuyahoga County region. It's KeyBank Capital Markets, PNC, and Fifth Third Securities. I think all members of the committee felt that we were comfortable that any or all of these 3 banks could provide us the underwriting assistance that we need, at least in the short term. And while we were impressed with some of the other submissions that we looked at, we think in the interest of the local economy and the level of expertise that these firms could offer, that we're comfortable making this recommendation. In the past, the underwriting selection was not submitted to council. I had recommended and talked to the county executive and said we should probably formalize our selection of these underwriters so that everybody knows above board how we're going to go about any particular financing deal that comes up in the immediate future. So with that, either myself or I believe Mr. McAleer could answer any questions of the committee, but we'd look to move forward with this and get your approval on it.
Okay. Any questions?
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Chairman, in the recitals, it says that the goal of this project is to promote diversity in the county's use of underwriters to assist in public financing. Describe the diversity that you're referring to.
Well, Councilman, in the future, what we'd like to do is come up with an actual formal process by which we award both senior and junior participation levels in any kind of bond offering we would do. There was no pre-established mechanism to select underwriters for bond deals in the past, it was kind of an informal, unwritten rotation rule, which, depending on the size of the bond offering that came forward and the timing of that bond offering, one of the underwriters could receive significant financial gains as opposed to another. So what we're going to look to do is to put together some policies and procedures on how these three primary underwriters will be used, how the deals will be rotated, maximum and minimum level of participation, and as we made reference in our recommendation to the executive, said we were going to go out and issue an RFQ to get minority enterprise underwriters to assist us so that we also can be more diverse in that respect. But it's primarily to come up with a system to efficiently allocate any kind of bond deals that are coming up so that one does not benefit far and above anyone else.
This contract has been in place, Mr. Chairman, has been in place over X amount of years before this. This isn't a new contract. It's been in place for a while.
Councilman, there was actually no official contract with any firm. The underwriters were selected from a pool that was previously provided. Then when each bond deal came up, they were incorporated into the bond deal individually. But there was no contract that was approved by council to set the pool itself.
Share with us some of the names of those who were underwriters before, so I can get a sense of how we have diversified the pool from the past.
Well, one of the big components that we looked at in terms of underwriting was, as I said, to keep our recommendations local if possible. Obviously, we want to support the county. We did remove Stiefel from consideration because of Mr. Offermatt's appointment as a financial advisor. They were obviously a big part in terms of underwriting in the county in the past. Key has done a number of underwriting things for, I'm trying to remember, I believe they did the Syntax bonds. So there's a variety of different underwriters. I don't think that any of the others, Wells Fargo had a junior role in some offerings in the past. I'm not sure beyond when I got here as to what the participation level was on some of these other ones.
Okay, but these three names are now being added for consideration.
These three will be the primary underwriters for the county moving forward, subsequent to the approval by council, and we'll look at this again in about 18 months to see if we need to establish a new pool.
And if I understand, they will be charged with adding like minority underwriters as well?
We're going to put out a separate invitation for that ourselves. We hope to do that sometime in January so that we can look at qualifications of minority underwriters. In the past, the county has used a couple, I believe Loop Capital, or there's one other one that doesn't come to mind right now. We want to formalize that process as well to give everybody a chance.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Miller.
This resolution, is it going to specify a particular length that this pool is good for, or is it open-ended?
I believe, Councilman, that we made the recommendation to the executive for an 18-month period for this pool to be initially active.
But the resolution does not so state, is that correct?
I do not have the resolution in front of me, but if it doesn't have it, no.
Okay. For the current pool being proposed here, was there a selection process, and were other applicants considered that were not included?
Yes, sir. As I said, the selection committee that reviewed both the financial advisor proposals and the underwriting proposals was comprised of myself, Mr. Glassburn, and Mr. McAleer. We met a number of times to go over both set of responses for each individual component of that RFQ that was issued. Besides KeyBank, PNC, and Fifth Third Securities, we reviewed proposals from Red Horse Financial Group, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo Securities, William Blair and Company, RBC Capital Markets, and Rockfleet Financial Services.
Okay, so it sounds like you gave a lot of priority to using local resources.
We believe that if the level of services were satisfactory and comparable to what we could receive from somebody outside the county, and there was no price differential, that our leanings were towards keeping the business in the county.
Makes sense. When you said you're going to develop policies and procedures to further spell this out, and as to the selection for specific projects and also the minority participation. When you develop these policies and procedures, are you going to submit that to the Administrative Rule Board?
Councilman, I have not thought that far ahead, but I will look into that and get back to you.
Okay. And I don't think I have any other questions. So
Any other
thank you.
questions? Yeah, Ms. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of the institutions that were considered previously that were not selected, are any of them SVEs? And would they be eligible for future consideration after the 18 months, I guess is the question.
Councilwoman, I'm not sure that any of them are registered with us as an SBE. As I said, we will be putting out a separate offering sometime next month. Anyone who participated in this is welcome, if they meet the criteria of that RFQ, to respond to that. But I'm not aware that any of these were specifically registered with the county as an SBE.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
A question, Mr. Chair. In the additional information that came with the packet, it does state the period of 18 months, but it's not within the actual resolution. Within that, it says your goal is to have the underwriter selected by the January 2017. You also mentioned putting out the bid for minority underwriters. Will you wait till this group is finalized and selected before moving on, or will happen simultaneously?
I think, Councilman, we're comfortable with moving forward with establishment of this pool, and then having the other pool. We can also use the service of these folks to help us in the selection of those, to do some background work on them.
Sure.
So I think we're comfortable with coming forward later with the results of that RFQ.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Mr. Chairman, Dennis, help me understand the process. If there's no MBE percentage connected to this particular contract, and you have a separate contract to reach the minority underwriters, how do you have a contract that's geared only toward the minority participation? What am I missing? What's going to happen in January?
Councilman, we want to establish the qualifications of participants registered as SBE or MBE to provide us underwriting assistance. Obviously, in terms of their capabilities, will be related to the size of any kind of bond offering we would participate in. And again, if we don't issue bonds of any type, these services will not be used. But in the past, the county has looked to have senior and junior levels of participation in bond offerings, sometimes related to a small business enterprise or a minority business enterprise. Other times there was splits between two major underwriting deals because of the nature of the deal, the specialties each underwriter brings. Some are better at retail markets than others. So we're looking to incorporate, as I said, some kind of criteria into our policies and procedures to make sure that everybody has an equal opportunity to participate in major bond offerings of the county. So that'll be established once we get the results of the request for qualifications on the next set of responses, we'll get back in.
So January will be an RFQ,
Right.
not an RFP. Okay. All right.
Any further questions? I heard there was a discussion about this contract, or this resolution terminating in 18 months, but it's not stated. Is it still the intent to add a provision that this shall term in 18 months?
I believe our discussions with the executive, Mr. Chairman, were that we would like to keep this pool active for 18 months, so I would not be opposed to adding that to the resolution.
Well, it's in this, but it's not in the actual resolution. So I would be comfortable asking Mr. King if he would draft an amendment, pass this out. Is there urgency to this? Do you need second reading suspension, or can this go 3 readings?
I think right now I'm comfortable with going 3 readings. I don't know if any bond issue that's coming up in the next few weeks.
Okay, so Mr. King, if you could draft an amendment, I'll make the recommendation, pass this out for second reading with an amendment coming through at the next council meeting to substitute to include the amendment. Is that okay? Any objections to that?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Miller?
The only thing I would point out is that the next meeting will be the last before break, and it would be mid-January before we could do a 3rd reading, and I just want to see if you're comfortable with that.
I think we're comfortable with going to 3 readings.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible we could have whatever the drafted amendment before, and we could just amend on the floor and do a second reading?
Yes, yeah, that's the
It
intent.
just seems to me, with the passage of the second reading as opposed to waiting until January, it just seems it gives a lot more.
Oh, you're saying second reading suspension and just have it all
And
done this
Have it
year?
all done and get the amendment,
That's fine.
just get the amendment to come before and we amend it on the floor.
Okay, so I'll make a motion then to adopt resolution 2016-0226 for second reading suspension, with the anticipation being we're going to get a substitute to include the 18-month time limit. Does that work?
It works for me. My only caveat was to leave the 18 months out and get a recommendation, because the one risk is if you find that it needs 20 months versus 18, it'd be a shame to have something that's in the middle of a project and let them come back. I know you threw 18 months out of the floor, but maybe have our folks work to make sure we get a substitute that actually puts a timeline on the end of it.
Well, let's do this. Let's move it out second reading suspension, and then we'll get an amendment drafted with the input from the fiscal director,
Right.
fiscal officer.
That's all I was looking for.
What the time limit should be. Okay. Motion is made and second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you. The next 3 items we're going to hear together, since they're related subject and same vendor. So will you be presenting those as well?
I will, Mr. Chair, and I have Lisa Rocco, who is our operations manager, and part of her responsibilities are the appraisal department, and Debbie Daptovich in the IT department, who has been our liaison, done a lot of work in terms of the new real property system. So as needed, I would call upon them to help us out with any specific questions. I can give you the overview of why I'm here today and why I think it's important for us, the specifics in terms of the detail of what we currently use and how it's going to be replaced and those sort of things. I think these 2 ladies are best served to answer those. So if it's all right with you, I'd just like to give you a little brief overview of where we're at. We have a real property tax and appraisal system that currently council was fortunate enough to give us some funding to replace. That system basically manages over 500,000 parcels with a market value of over $97 billion, which generates in excess of $2.8 billion in tax revenues each year. The original RFP to replace the tax system, should I do this? There you go. You guys are slipping. The RFP to replace the tax system was initially issued in 2013. In 2015, as I said, the county contracted with N. Harris Corporation to implement their product line, which is the Governed Tax Suite. The cost of the project over the next 5 years is approximately $7.6 million, and we expect to go live with the new implementation in January of 2018. That's for the base real property system. So that initial order that was put out for the RFP just contained an informational provision to respond to the specifics of a CAMA module. CAMA stands for Computer Assisted Mass Appraisal System. There were no plans at that particular point in time to implement a new CAMA system for the county. So the county moved forward when they finished up the review of the bids to push towards the selection of N. Harris, and subsequently they were awarded the contract. I came on board right before the triennial update in June, July of 2015, and as I gained a little more experience along the way, I realized that we were very severely limited in terms of what we could use our existing CAMA system for. Our system is pretty much handmade, created, and staffed in-house and supported in-house with limited resources, which kind of threatens our future in terms of succession planning, puts us overly reliant on a number of different people, and it requires substantial integration in terms of bridge work or integration software to go into other aspects of the property tax system. So I asked our operations group and with the assistance of some folks from IT to take a look at our possibilities of getting a CAMA module from this new vendor. It did not seem to me to make much sense to go out to acquire these services, which we are going to have to do at some point in 2018 or 2019. It would make much more sense to integrate these into the installation of the software that we're procuring now, because it'll be a better fit. And if we don't do it, we're going to have to spend considerable time, effort, money on integrating our existing system into the new software, which is fairly complicated, and it also jeopardizes the integrity of the system a little bit. So over the past year, we've taken a look at the value of that integrated system, and at this point, we'd like to come forward and make a recommendation that we expand the project's capabilities. There is a cost associated with that is related to those individual components of the contracts, and that will increase the project by approximately $3 million over the next 4 years. Should we be fortunate enough to get your approval and move forward, we would go live with this particular module in 2019, as opposed to starting the process of acquiring a module in 2019. We're too late, and it's too complicated and too cumbersome at this point to use this implementation or installation of this module for the 2018 reappraisal, but we're confident that we'll be ready to go after that's completed. Then we can kind of unplug our current systems and move forward with this, because the entire system that the Harris Corporation offers will be integrated. So I've listed here for you some of the things that we looked at in terms of the pros and cons of why we would either keep our current system or go to a module that was associated with the Harris product. Just briefly to summarize, we have paper-based field appraisals. We need to hire data entry workers to take those paper entries that the appraisers fill out when they go out to look at all the properties. They need to compile those, come back. We have to hire data entry people then to basically input everything that they write down on those papers related to properties. I can tell you in terms of conversations I've had with residential and commercial taxpayers that a lot of times there's some transposition errors on that. It's not the most accurate way of doing things. We can go to an automated paperless system for those appraisals, which reduces the probability and propensity of any errors and eliminates our need to hire ancillary people like data processors. We have a fairly antiquated system. It was implemented in the late 1990s. We have 14 or more custom developed applications to complete all the gaps that we experience in our functionality. That's again because it's kind of been like a handmade patchwork system over the years. When we switch to a new system, we'll have the ability to control and monitor daily production. We can integrate it with our GIS systems, and we can also use data visualization tools, which we're unable to use right now, which means if appraisers can be in the field, they can call up comparable properties, get pictures of those properties, have all the statistical information available to them when they're doing the appraisal of the property that they're sitting in front of. That ability is not there today. And again, that'll all be done through a paperless system as opposed to somebody in a car writing down on a piece of paper each parcel, bringing the information back to us to compile into a big database. In terms of limitations, we have limited ability for our end users to run reports or even query data. That's again because of the age system that we're using right now. We don't do things that we should be doing in terms of dashboards. That's quick analysis of data based on whatever kind of criteria is being looked at. We don't have that ability with our current systems. We don't have real-time data in those systems because of the obvious things that go into doing appraisals in the field and then inputting, and somebody has to reconcile what's been input and check for errors. That'll be eliminated. And we have a really limited workflow, and we don't have any ability to process any kind of changes because we're limited by the capabilities of the system, and we're totally reliant on the few people that run those systems, which I don't think is a good position to be in. This module that we're recommending is a modern integrated solution. There'll be no duplication of data, exchanges, interfaces, subsystems, or it'll take away the need to have additional maintenance on all the separate systems that we use right now. It's one system for everybody to learn as opposed to 2 or 3 or 4, and we'll have a reduced reliance on our technical staff, which will then free them up to do some higher level functions. Over the long term, the costs will be lower in terms of annual costs. We can eliminate roughly $190,000 a year in Oracle licensing alone by moving to the system and having it self-contained with a main primary Harris project. In terms of the timing and the risks of delaying the implementation, putting in the CAMA module right now will allow us to optimize some labor and cost efficiencies. As I stated earlier, waiting till 2019 to pursue this would both be ineffective to the primary product that we're buying now, but also puts us into some other risks associated with folks that are nearing retirement, and we don't have a proper succession plan in place. This will take away some of the risk associated with that. The consultants that are already working on the tax project and understand our process, and that project's going very well so far, they can apply that knowledge that they've gained through the implementation of the main product to this specific application and help us with the appraisal end of what we're doing and make it more functional as opposed to having somebody come back in and start over in 2019. Not implementing the modules at this time will mean that our custom interfaces to the old system and all the subsystems will need to be built and maintained through the life of the new system. And that could be another 3 to 6 years then, depending on the results of any RFP that's issued to get this module. Data to and from the governed tax suite to the current systems will need to be maintained and synchronized, meaning data redundancy, which is something we're going to try and eliminate, and that data will exist in multiple systems, something else we're trying to eliminate. All of our custom developed applications, subsystems, and interfaces will need to be rewritten in the next several years, as the technologies used to create these systems is no longer supported by Microsoft. Some of the language, and Debbie can probably give you a little more detail on that should you like, it's antiquated, in some cases obsolete computer language, so all those are going to have to be redone. We eliminate the possibility of having to do that if we integrate into this system right now. And as I said, over the long term, we should see some return on investment. That'll take about 6 years for us to do, but I think it's well worth the investment now. And it also, what this doesn't take into account is the risk that we run by operating on our current system with a limited staff of people that are familiar with that system. Both those inherent risks, I believe, are too strong for us to continue at this point. And based on my knowledge coming in, like I said before the triennial update, I've learned that this would probably be the more economical and risk-free way to pursue this in the future. I just think there's too much reliance on our products. There's too much risk in terms of danger with the age of those products. Maintenance contracts are shaky. We're going to have to redo a lot of the current systems if we're going to integrate it into the primary Harris product. So I believe at this particular point in time, this would be the best way to go. And just to summarize, we'll give you some timelines for the project. If we would amend the contract this month, that would allow us to start the phase related to the appraisal process in January 2017. The design of that process will probably take roughly 6 months, taking us through June. We'll have then the actual development of the product, which will be July 2017, with an estimated target completion date of May of 2018. And then we'll start in 2018 rolling it out. And again, we can give you some information on running dual systems. There's a lot of work there to make sure that nothing gets missed in the transition. But our target completion and go live date is in early 2019. So in summary, I won't reiterate everything that we've already touched on, but I believe it's a lower cost of ownership. Supports our change, gives us a better system, makes it more functional, makes it easier for people to use, makes us less reliant on old software, and kind of reduces the risk of having certain individuals control a big portion of the process. So those are all things that we went into it with goals to look at. And I'm comfortable that this recommendation will put us in the best position to not only deal with the CAMA module, but it's a good addition to the new property tax system. And we can answer any questions about how that project is going as well.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Gallagher.
Taking everything that you said on face value, how do I know any of that's true without an RFP? What can I? This isn't plug and play. This isn't off the shelf. This is developed, right?
It's in the process of being developed. I would, Debbie, if you want to.
Well, if it's in the process of being developed, you're telling me this company went on their own and started developing this without any instruction from the county?
No.
No, we're actually in the middle of implementing the tax solution.
Right.
Right, and the appraisal solution and the tax solution work very closely together.
But were they one?
They can work as one integrated system. We haven't started working on the appraisal portion yet.
Why?
Because we're asking that these contracts be approved for that purpose.
How do I know there's not another product out there that's better?
if we went out to RFP, we could potentially look at other products. However, the true value that we see in this is that we're going to have one integrated system. So we want to eliminate as much as we can interfaces to other systems. So we're looking, because they work very closely together.
Well, sure, they're the same company. My concern is this, is that we approved Part A with potential discussions about Part B. We didn't give them any money or the go-ahead on Part B, but they're on their way doing it because they're going to argue maybe truly that, hey, this is gonna coexist with what you have. My concern is the timing, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good at all. And this is a $3 million bump without going out to bid, without looking at any other products, without knowing if any other products exist. Do you know if any other products exist?
There are other products on the market, yes.
So why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we looking at it?
I can speak to that, Councilman. We did consider the possibility of putting this out to RFP. With the amount of folks that we have working on the primary tax project right now, we thought this would be the best time to integrate with a solution that's associated with the primary product. If we go out to bid, we're not going to put this particular CAMA implementation module in. We're not even going to start that process until 2019, after the next.
Because it doesn't exist.
No, I'm saying if we went out to bid and we got another vendor, by the time we were ready to use that vendor, it's going to be 2019 to do that. Because it's going to take 6 months to a year to go to acquire.
And again, I'm not saying what you're telling us wasn't truthful. I'm just saying I don't know if there's something out there that isn't better, isn't cheaper. You can't say that. I can't say that. We have, see, I'm very critical of the courts and their computer systems, and this is what I'm looking at. I have to be fair and equitable across the board. They have a vendor who claims they're the only one that can do it. I know they're not, but the courts are convinced and happy with giving all kinds of money to this vendor. I don't want to get in a position where I'm criticizing that process, and here we are walking into the same process. You can't tell me that we're going to save money. We may, but you can't tell me we will. You can't tell me that this is going to be better. It may be, but it might not be. And this is $3 million after the fact. The timing is horrible.
Councilman, what I could tell you is there was a request for information related to this module in the original RFP.
2013?
Was it 2013?
It was 2013.
2013.
3 years ago.
And again, based on what I learned since I arrived, because that process was already 90% completed by the time I got here, knowing the condition of the current systems, knowing the amount of technology that we basically waste trying to interface that with, and should we not do this, we're going to have to expend monies to interface that technology right now into the new system.
And you would agree, historically, that's been true going back many, many, many years. And now, and I don't know who these people are that have too much control or you're concerned about. You expressed some concern about too few people controlling the process, and that very well may be true, but that was true 10 years ago.
Yes, sir, I would not.
And that'll be true probably for the next 2 years, even with developing this. See, my concern is your timing. The timing is horrible. It looks bad. It doesn't pass the smell test, for me anyhow. That's just me saying it. I think I don't see why we have to rush into this. We've had a bad system that has given us trouble, no doubt about it. But you can't argue me right now. If we don't do this now, we're going to be looking real bad in 2 years. We were looking bad 10 years ago. We were looking bad last year. We were looking bad in 2013. 3 years, now we're 3 years in, and we're going to rush with the argument that we have to have it without knowing what else is out there. For $3 million, it doesn't look good.
Okay, Mr. Miller. I'm sorry, go ahead, I didn't interrupt.
I was just going to point out, we definitely could look at another system, but I can guarantee it won't come in at this price, only because looking at other products are going to require us to recreate all of our tax and appraisal data in a separate database. And then we are going to have to create interfaces and data exchanges between any unrelated product and the governed product.
But
So
we knew that going in when we contracted with this company. We
had
basically
different leadership at that time. That
I
decided
understand.
not to move forward.
And I understand. There's a lot of change, and it's been very difficult for not only you but us. But our concern is that I think we have to be very careful on when we approve a contract for $7 million and 6, 8, whatever it is, months later, a company comes in with your recommendation for $3 million more without looking on the outside. The timing couldn't be worse for you and us. I know you need it, but again, we needed it 10 years ago. We needed it 3 years ago. But here you are now, and I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying from my seat, it just doesn't look good. And you can't tell me, and you're probably right, but you can't with all certainty tell me it's going to be cheaper and better. You can't, because I don't know. Unless you've talked to these other companies and are willing to say, yeah, I know. I know the numbers. We don't know the numbers.
I can only tell you, Councilman, my job is to bring you recommendations on what I think is best for the county, both economically and from a system standpoint. And in doing some research and talking to some folks, informal, albeit, that I think this would be the best way to go. If we have to wait 3 years or 2 years to start an implementation after putting something out to bid, and again, it's a bad comparison, but I don't want to buy a Chevy product with no radio and no air conditioning, and then 3 years later try and put a Ford parts into it.
But we
it's going
did.
to make it.
But we did. We bought the Chevy without the radio, and now you want to put the radio in.
I was not here when
I understand, but we
we
were.
were listening to the radio.
So, I mean, again, I'm only one person
Yeah,
here.
I know.
I'm very uncomfortable with this. I understand your position, and I understand the place in which you are. But, if we start setting precedents like this, and I have a history of condemning such moves without real hard facts and numbers, I can't move forward on this. It's not right. Like I said, we bought the car without the radio, and I want to put the radio in. And you weren't here. I get it.
Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chairman, Director, how many companies do you think are out there that could alternatively provide this service?
Richard, do you want to come up and introduce yourself?
Similar. Richard Biani with Harris Govern, the vendor that the fiscal office is proposing. In this industry, there are not a lot of vendors that have that capability in the state of Ohio. We're one of them. There's potentially another vendor that had submitted a proposal on the tax system as well. If you look at the property tax systems, there were 4 vendors that submitted proposals. We were the selected vendor because of our product capability and our financial stability and long-term commitment to the product and to our customers and ourselves. Based on the property tax system, that's the same vendor that had proposed for the property tax system was not favored by the county's team because of whatever reasons as part of the evaluation process. You're going to have the same evaluation criteria that's going to drive the decision again on the appraisal and the CAMA system. What's happening today, and Mr. Gallagher, I totally understand your point and respect that. But today, because the county has already our core modules, there is, from our perspective, a direct and immediate cost saving by incorporating the appraisal modules close to $970,000 in direct modules, because those same modules, you get another system, you're going to have those potential similar modules. They're going to cost you that amount, potentially higher, because we know the market as a vendor. And today, with the approval of the appraisal system to be from Harris, that core savings is directly into the county's saving by deciding that way. Second, as a vendor, in order to earn your business as well, we have extended $162,000 in discounts on services. We believe it is the right thing for us and the county to do it today. Why today? Because the project already started on the tax. We're doing analysis of all the processes and requirements, and there are a lot of touch points between the many systems that handle the appraisal environment today and govern our software that's going to be working. So our staff already know all those touch points, and for us to kind of tie them into together will make sense. Second, you've got 14 systems. You've got Govern. Govern, our software, has one database, one user interface. Both CAMA and tax are in one database. Staff will search once for Mr. Gallagher. In the appraisal side, they have to search 14 times to access the data that will make sense. You get another vendor on the appraisal side and the CAMA side, and you've got Harris on the tax side. You still run into those double maintenance amount because our core modules have decreased the cost on the license. It has reduced your overall maintenance cost as compared to a new vendor that's going to come off the street to handle the appraisal side.
Mr. Chairman, Director, how long is this system supposed to be good for?
You want to give the technical response to that?
Many, many years to come. Our software started more than 30 years ago in the COBOL days, migrated to Unix, migrated to Windows, and now it's based on the latest .NET platform. And it's there for many, many years to go. Harris has two business models that are unique in the industry. We believe that a customer, a government agency that invests into a product should pay for a license once throughout the life cycle of the product with it. Our commitment, investment in R&D is very heavy. That's why all our products are being migrated on the .NET, and they are in the latest platform. 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we don't know what the technology might throw at us. It's in our contract with the county already that as long as we have an active maintenance agreement with the county, you will get software upgrades, new versions, at no cost to the county.
Mr. Chairman, I'm also uncomfortable about this, but my source of discomfort is entirely different. My question is, what would it take to get this up and running for the 2018 appraisal? I'm just very nervous about the cost and the problems that might ensue of maintaining separate systems for the 2018 appraisal.
Councilman, I can tell you from an operational side that we've talked about it and looked at it. I would not recommend that we use the module itself to conduct the 2018 appraisal. The problem being we have limited resources. The people that are doing the day-to-day work now, both on this system and soon to be involved in the ERP implementation, are the same people that have to do the testing and the review of the new system without adding substantial resources. And even then, I don't think we can get them up to speed because our systems are they're both old and they're customized to the point that you can't just pluck somebody off the street and put them in there and after 2 weeks they can figure out what's going on. So We did make the decision that we were not going to use the system to generate that appraisal, but we'll have everybody working on it to the extent they can concurrently to take advantage of the efficiencies of being integrated in the same software. I would not recommend to you that we, or represent to you that we could get this installed, tested, and implemented in time for that appraisal. I think that'd be irresponsible.
Final question. Could you put up the ROI chart on the board again?
Hopefully.
Okay. My question is, even on the blue line, the angle of cost escalation over the years is pretty steep, and my question is, why is that?
So the way that we came up with the ROI on this is and you should have also received a business case in your packet. If you look at page 7 on that, that includes what we looked at on the current costs were the current costs of the maintenance from the existing vendor, and then assume the percentage increase over the years, which is currently, I believe, 5%. And we also looked at Oracle licensing costs. So Oracle licensing in itself is pretty expensive. And that will continue to grow over time. This new system uses a SQL Server database licensing, which is a lot less expensive. So we're saving a lot of costs there. Assuming we kept the current systems and we had to rewrite the applications that are old, all those mini little subsystems and subroutines and all that. That's how we came up with the ROI. We also, considered in the cost that we will be paying for temporary labor, and if we do nothing, we'll have to continue to have that data entry and hire those temporary workers to do that data entry.
And does the ROI chart include only the operating cost and not the installation?
It includes, it includes the installation. This is a complete package.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Schron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand my two colleagues' concerns. However, Mr. Miller's wanted to accelerate. I'm always kind of guy who likes to accelerate and speed things up as a type A. But I do understand, having installed ERP databases, if you accelerate that pace at a pace that it's not conducive with your staff and your existing projects that you've got under, the thing can go off the track pretty quick, and that would be a bigger disaster than saving the time and energy out there. And I understand Mr. Gallagher's concern. I think that really our concern should have been to raise the issues years ago when it came up the first time, because this is the only logical path that we could have gone down, I think. But the point is, it should have been brought up that you're probably going to go down this path with this vendor. Once you chose this vendor, you're going to go tax and appraisal more than likely, because of once you've chosen one, it's the continuity. And it seems to me that's, if fault lies anywhere, it lies in us and your predecessors not being very clear that you want those systems to integrate, and we were probably going to go down this path out there. So that's, I understand Mr. Gallagher's frustration, but the point, it seems to me, that should have been made clear that if you're going to go down a path of this nature, you're probably going to go down this path for both the appraisal and the tax. And so I do understand you don't want to have, because my impression would be, even if we find another product that might be even slightly lower in cost, there's going to be an integration cost, and the right hand is going to point to the left hand, and it's always going to be the other vendor's fault for why the two projects are not working together. I intend to hold this gentleman's feet 100% to the fire, being a guy who buys products of this nature, that if there's any mistake or any oops or anything like that, that we as taxpayers, which is what we represent, are looking to you to stand behind what you stood up here and said, that your product is going to coordinate 100% between tax and appraisal. And at that point in time, then I'll be happy to be a cheerleader for your product out there. In the event that it does not, I think that we should even, is this a brand new product on the appraisal side?
No.
I didn't think it was.
Not at all. And
It's an
that's why-
existing product, so it's not.
Absolutely, Mr. Gallagher, kind of asked the question
I
about
thought there was
the
an impression
development.
that you guys were
It
writing
is
this
not.
code down the street, and this is existing code that you already have.
That is absolutely correct. All the appraisal functions are already in place. The suite is already in place. The mobile appraiser for the appraisers to handle the field data collection and so on is all available. The only thing that we do as part of the implementation, Govern, is a very, very highly configurable system. Highly configurable system, the county will become independent of us as a vendor post your go live. When instead of having 14 different custom applications for your potential CAMF 10 years from now, you'll do all your requirement within the system based on configurability. And therefore, it will be part of the core system that the county owns and supports, and we support you as a vendor.
And what large counties are actually already using the configured system with tax and appraisal right this moment?
Right at this moment, we've got, asking me off the top of my head, Saskatchewan Assessment Management Agency, which the team had talked to them. We've got the province of Prince Edward Island, which is a province-wide. They have both. We have Glynn County, Georgia. They have both.
And what would they say about the integration of the system?
Absolutely seamless because it's one database.
Have we talked to them from our end? I'm sorry, now this question is going over here. And we've got them on the record that they have spoken and said that these products integrate both tax
Yes,
and...
we did do our due diligence and interview other clients before trying to make this decision
But
to.
we have no Ohio-based counties, it doesn't sound like, based on the list.
No.
Not for this product.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Mr. Gallagher.
Did you talk to anybody in the county? No, they're probably all gone, but when, in 13, when you came on, did you have any discussions about this?
I did not have any discussions per se, but I know the value we bring to any customer. As part of my presentations, it is my job and my role when I do my presentations to present to my attendees the best value they could get out of my solution.
So who from the county went to you, and when did they go to you?
Actually, when did we start the discussion? Actually, Mr. Kennedy came to me, and Debbie as well. We talked about it as the timing, just because the team they have talked to the team, and they realize it is the right time to start the project, not wait until later. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it now. And that's when the discussion started. Prior to that, I did present the overall integrated model that our software brings to the county. Definitely I did. Because I want the county to see, not only because I know as part of the property tax system, there was just a tax component and the appraisal was, give me details about the appraisal and what you could offer. We answered all those and we kind of pitched the integrated value. One system reduces a lot of time.
I don't disagree with the one. I don't disagree with that, and I don't mean to be difficult.
No,
Again, there's something here that isn't right, and the thing that's probably not right is the people that initially were in place to be doing this the right way aren't here. I would assume. It's just like I said, the timing of this to me is queer.
I was the one councilman who asked that we look at what was offered in terms of the modules being available, and did incorporate discussions with both the technical staff and the director of IT, and we all reached the same conclusion after reviewing that. But it was based on the situation that I thought existed and my reluctance to extend that situation much further in its current state.
Mr. Gallagher, and council members and chair, if you don't mind, just if I look at the start of the project today, we get you live in 2019. If we start the project in 2019, you still have a 2-year, 2.5 year window that we need to implement the project. And that cost, if you start today, that $1.35 million in cost between 2020 and 2022 will be eliminated if we start today. If we start in 2020 or 2019, that cost is going to always be there and be pushed again.
Well, again, it goes to my concern the timing doesn't look good, because it won't be ready for the next round because it's too quick, and it's going to be tweaked for the one after. And I don't know timing. This isn't my bailiwick. I just have a concern that this pops up right after you get the contract on the tax side. And I'm wondering if there are vendors and products out there that may challenge all three of your comments today that you're the best. And you can't and I can't say there isn't somebody out there that could do that. Don't know. Other than the seamless maneuvering with your product being married to another product of yours, which I understand, but I think we probably, as Jack said, I think we probably are the problem. This should have all been included at the beginning.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any questions? Clerk reminded me that these items need to be read into the record before we proceed any further. So if the clerk will please read 227, 228, and 229 into the record.
Resolution 2016-0227, authorizing amendment to contract number CE 1500235 with N. Harris Computer Corporation for software implementation services for the real property tax system for the period 10/1/2015 through 9/30/2020 to change the scope of services effective 1/1/2017 and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $1,939,658. Resolution 2016-0228, authorizing amendment to contract number CE 1500236 with N. Harris Computer Corporation for software licenses for the real property tax system effective 10/1/2015 to change the scope of services effective 1/1/2017 and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $805,930. Resolution 2016-0229, authorizing amendment to contract number CE 1500237 with N. Harris Computer Corporation for support and maintenance services for the real property tax system for the period 10/1/2015 through 9/30/2020 to change the scope of services effective 1/1/2017 and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $337,348.
All right, thank you. Okay, so before us we have three resolutions. I'll entertain a motion to address these either individually or collectively. Let me just ask, is there an urgent matter for these or these three readings if it's moved out of committee? 3 meetings acceptable?
I think we could live with 3 readings. I know that we're trying to coordinate schedules with the main property tax system implementation, but
we're looking at the kickoff in January for the appraisal as well. So because some of the processes are going to be looked at on the tax side.
So you're on there.
Because some of the processes are being looked at the tax side, we're looking at kicking off the CAMA project in January. That way we could tie the processes that tie together and start deeply dive into them and leave the appraisal specific functions out at this stage.
So the third reading appears to be January 9th, correct?
Is it good enough for you?
Our preference is to kick off early in January, so if we can do a suspension of rule for 2 readings, this would be ideal. And if not, 3 readings, definitely.
But third reading is the 1st of January.
Third reading is January 9th.
9th. Yeah, I think we can make that work, given the concerns.
And Mr. Chairman, the fact that it's January 9th and hearing the concerns of some members and be able to continue that discussion as we move along in this, I think will be good, so we can flush out some of this.
Councilman, I'd be happy to, Mr. Chair, make that work.
Okay. Are we can go one of two ways. We can keep it in committee until the questions are answered, or we can move at Mr. Hairston's recommendation of moving it out for second reading on a 3-reading track and get the answers answered between now and January 9.
Mr. Greenspan, I think you're probably looking at me on that. I'm not going to be someone that's going to hold something up. I just thought it important. I'm very uncomfortable with this, the way in which it's gone down. I don't blame anybody in this room, quite honestly. I look at us in the mirror as much as anything. But I think I need to be consistent. I would vote to move it out. I probably wouldn't support this on the floor.
All right. I'll entertain a motion either way. I mean, if somebody wishes to make a motion to move each of these. Let's put this in my mind. These three are intertwined. You can't pass one without the other two, or two without the third. So I'll go ahead and I'll make the motion to move resolutions 2016-0227, 28, and 29 to council for second reading. Is there a second? Second. Okay, there's been a second. Is there discussion on the motion?
So it's gonna go 3 readings?
It'll go 3 readings, yes, as the motion is currently presented and seconded. Okay, no discussion on the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. There is a quorum. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any miscellaneous business before the committee? Hearing none. Any other public comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.